You're sitting in a windowless office on the 14th floor of a tower in downtown Chicago. 3 monitors, a cup of coffee that went cold 4 hours ago. Your hands rest on the keyboard. You have root access to the core banking platform of one of the largest retail banks in North America. 47 million active customer accounts, $2.3 trillion in daily transaction volume. Right now, at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, you could move every dollar in their system into an account of your choosing. You could wipe the balances. You could plant ransomware that would hold the institution hostage by sunrise. You could do it in 90 seconds. Nobody would stop you. Nobody would even see it coming. You don't do any of that. You open a text file. You start writing the report. That's the job. You break in. You document how you did it. You walk back out through the same door you came in, and you hand them a 40-page PDF explaining everything that's wrong with their multi-billion-dollar infrastructure. They pay you for the privilege. They fix maybe 60% of what you found. 6 months later, you come back and do it all over again. You're a red team operator. On paper, you're a security consultant. In the industry, they call you a white hat. The truth is, the job title doesn't mean much. The skills are identical to the people who empty bank accounts for a living. The only thing that separates you from them is a signed statement of work and the decision you make every single night to close the laptop instead of pressing enter. You didn't plan for this. You were 13 when you figured out your middle school had left the admin credentials for the gradebook system as the default. You changed a D to a B on your own transcript. Put it back the next day because the guilt was eating you alive. Nobody ever noticed. That was the first time you understood that the entire world ran on broken software maintained by overworked people, and the only thing holding it together was that most users didn't know how trivial it was to pull apart. You taught yourself everything. Python before you could drive. Assembly language in high school. By 17, you were finding bugs in commercial software and reporting them through bug bounty programs. You made $40,000 your senior year. You declared it on your taxes. Your guidance counselor didn't know what to do with you. Neither did your parents. You skipped college. You got a job at a boutique security firm in Boston and started learning the craft from people who'd been doing it since before the internet had ads. The first real engagement you remember was a hospital system. 6 facilities across 3 states. Your team had 10 days to demonstrate how a nation-state actor could compromise patient records and disable medical devices. You got in through the parking garage, not a metaphor. You walked in dressed like an HVAC contractor, carrying a clipboard and a badge you'd printed that morning. You found an unlocked network closet. You plugged in a small device that looked like a phone charger. 3 hours later, you were inside their electronic health records system from a coffee shop across the street. You wrote the report. You slept like the dead that night. You remember that part, how clean it felt, how the sleep came easy because you just made thousands of patients safer without any of them knowing you existed. The second engagement was easier. The third was easier still. By the 15th, you'd stopped feeling the weight of it. You stopped being impressed by the fact that you could walk into a Fortune 500 company wearing a polo shirt and walk out with the CEO's email archive. You started being bored by it. That's the thing nobody tells you, how quickly you adjust to seeing the inside of the machine. The first time you pivoted from a single-fished credential to domain admin, in under 2 hours, you stared at the screen for 10 minutes, trying to process what you'd just done. By the 50th time, you were eating a sandwich with one hand and typing with the other. You become very good at this. You specialize. Some operators go deep on web application exploitation. Some go deep on Active Directory. You go deep on what the industry calls initial access, getting inside. You study human beings more than you study code. You learn that the strongest firewall in the world can be bypassed with a phone call to the right receptionist on the right afternoon. You learn that people want to be helpful, and helpful people are the softest attack surface in any organization. You learn to sound like IT. You learn to sound like HR. You learn to sound like a senior executive who forgot his password 20 minutes before a board meeting. You work for banks. You work for defense contractors. You work for a pharmaceutical company testing whether a competitor could steal their trial data. You work for a power utility that serves 14 million customers. You find vulnerabilities in their grid management system that would let someone black out 3 states from a laptop in a hotel room. You document it. You brief the executives. They thank you. Most of the findings get patched. Some of them don't, because patching would cost more than the executives are willing to spend, and no regulation requires them to spend it. You file that information somewhere you don't look at directly. You start to notice the shape of the world, how much of it is held together by nothing, how the payment systems, the hospital systems, the water treatment plants, the pipelines, the air traffic control backups, all of it runs on code written decades ago by people who are now retired, and nobody alive fully understands how any of it actually works. You learn that the people running these systems know this. They're terrified. They just can't say it out loud because saying it out loud would crash the stock price. The offer comes when you're 31. It doesn't come the way people imagine it. There's no dark parking garage. There's no man in a trench coat. It comes at a security conference in Singapore. You're giving a talk on novel exploitation techniques against industrial control systems. Afterward, a man buys you a drink at the hotel bar. He's polite. He's American. He works for a consulting firm you've never heard of. He asks you thoughtful questions about your research. He hands you a card with a phone number and nothing else. 3 months later, you meet him again, this time in Zurich. He tells you his firm has clients with very specific needs. He tells you the work pays $1.5 million a year, tax optimized through a structure he'd be happy to explain. He tells you there would be no reports, no briefings, no remediation meetings. You'd find the vulnerability. You'd hand it to him. What happened next would not be your concern. You sit with it for a long time. You understand exactly what he's offering. He's offering to buy the thing you've been giving away for 10 years. You've been finding 0 days and handing them to the companies that shipped the broken software. He's offering to buy them at market rate. Market rate for the kind of things you find is $500,000 to $2 million a piece, depending on who's buying, depending on what the target is. You tell him no. He smiles. He says he understands. He says most people say no the first time. He says the offer doesn't expire. He pays the bar tab and leaves. You fly home. You don't tell anyone. You tell yourself you held a line, and that means something, and that you're still the same person who changed a D to a B and put it back because the guilt was eating you alive. You say it to yourself enough times that it starts to feel true. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, 14 months later, you find something. You're running an assessment on a mid-sized defense contractor. Routine engagement, standard scope. You're pivoting through their network, and you stumble into a segment that shouldn't be there. A command and control beacon calling out to infrastructure in a country you won't name. You trace it. You sit and you watch it for an hour. Whoever is on the other end of that connection has been inside this company's network for somewhere between 18 and 26 months. They've exfiltrated terabytes. They have persistence across 40 hosts. They own this environment more thoroughly than the people who built it. You know who they are before you finish tracing. You've seen this tradecraft before. You've read the threat intelligence reports. You know what country they work for. You know what they're taking. You report it. The company panics. The FBI gets involved. You're debriefed in a conference room by 3 people who don't give you their full names. They ask careful questions. They thank you for your work. They tell you this stays classified. You sign paperwork. You go home. 3 weeks later, the man from the hotel bar calls your personal phone. You don't know how he has the number. He doesn't mention the contractor. He doesn't have to. He just says he heard you'd had an interesting month. He says the offer is still open. He says the rate has gone up. You hang up. You stare at the phone for a long time. You think about Sarah, the woman from your firm, who did this work for 15 years before she burned out and opened a bakery in Vermont. You think about David, the operator 2 cubicles down, who put a gun in his mouth last spring because he couldn't stop seeing what he'd seen inside the systems of a hospital that ran background checks on its own patients. You think about the stars on walls you'll never see, and the stars on no wall at all for the people who work outside official channels, who protect things that can't be named by clients, who will deny you existed if the engagement ever goes sideways. You think about the line you drew in the Zurich hotel bar. You think about how Sarah would tell you the line isn't real, how the line is just where you're standing right now, how 3 years from now, you won't be standing here either, how you just won't see it happening. You open your laptop, you delete the voicemail. There's a new engagement file waiting in your inbox. Municipal water treatment, 6 facilities, critical infrastructure. The scope of work is standard. You read it twice. You start planning the attack. You tell yourself it's the work that matters. You tell yourself the utilities you protect have people inside them, real people, and those people go home to their kids at night because you found the hole before someone else did. You tell yourself the job is worth the wait. You've been telling yourself things like that your whole career. You make coffee. You sit down at the keyboard. Your hands rest on the keys the way they've rested 10,000 times before. You look at the login prompt on the utility's public-facing portal. You start typing. The system responds the way systems always respond. Quietly, patiently, indifferent to the intentions of the person on the other end. The truth is, you could go either way. You always could have every engagement, every credential, every private key you've ever touched. The only thing that has ever separated you from the people on the other side is a decision you make at 3 a.m. in a windowless room on a floor most people in the building don't know exists. You make the decision. You make it again tomorrow. You make it every day for the rest of your career. Some mornings you know why. Some mornings you don't. You close the laptop. You go home. You sleep fine. That's what scares you most. Not the work, not the offers, not the man from the hotel bar who still calls every 18 months like clockwork. What scares you most is how quiet the decision has become. How there was a time it used to keep you awake. How now it just feels like closing a door in a house you've lived in for so long, you don't remember moving in. Your mother used to say you had a gift. She meant it as a blessing. You're not sure anymore what it was.